So, we all know how to make a Cordova app now, at least a little bit. It'll probably make a lot more sense if you take time after the presentation to clone the repo and look through the source code yourself. Let's talk about testing. So, in JavaScript, we have a lot of interesting things we can do. Essentially, what we want to try to avoid is using immediately invoked function expressions. We need a point to actually test. So here I've found the app to window, and then I'm creating a function within app as well. So then when you go later and start testing, you know where your function is, and you have a point to access it. That's essentially all I mean by that. So how do we actually write tests or specs? We need a test framework. And thankfully, JavaScript has many, or at least 3 popular ones. So we have Jasmine, QUnit, and I think there's Mocha as well. I'm a fan of BDD testing, which is behavior-driven development, which basically means that you sort of map out what your behavior of your object is going to be, and then you implement it, and then eventually your test will pass. So you write test first, and then implement it, and then it passes. Yeah, and then you just write straight up Jasmine test as usual. It's pretty easy. And then how do we run the tests? Well, this is the magic part that perhaps is a little bit confusing. So we need a task runner. There's typically grunt or gulp, and I think there's cake or something like that. So I chose gulp. To automate test runs on the repository available on github.com. And also behind the scenes, we're using Karma as the test runner and Phantom.js to actually emulate the web browser. So to get the project, you clone the GitHub repo. That should be pretty easily findable by Google. If you just Google GitHub Winnipeg Android and then look for the Cordova test template repo. And then look at the README for setup instructions, because you're going to need to install a few things, including Phantom.js, which is basically just a headless web browser. So, demo. What we're going to do is we're just basically going to clone the repo and run gulp. Pretty straightforward. So let's get to it. This is what it looks like here, the GitHub repo. Just run through this, install a few things. You need Node, you need Phantom.js, and then install a few things globally. And then once you've done that, the repo. Found. Now, change directory into it. And then you have to install Node dependencies. So this, basically what this will do is this will download a few things behind the scenes that the task runner is using. Including Jasmine, the test framework itself, and I think key press events as well. It's Phantom.js. So here we go, done, easy. Now what we need to do is run gulp, hopefully. And you can see our tests are passing. Awesome. So you can rerun the test by pressing return. It runs it, and you can cancel, Control C, easy. So that's all fine and good. Let's look at some source code. display very well.
You can go down a bit with the size of the font if you want.
Yeah. Good. Did anyone see that?
You can still see just fine. It almost smaller.
Smaller?
Yeah, that's about that. Yeah.
That's good. Great. Okay. So first of all, you can see we have a similar test or a similar Cordova app, like Dan showed us how to do. How to do Cordova create and then your name of your app, and then we have a spec directory, which basically just houses our tests. I wrote it so you don't have to include your actual specs in your app itself, because when you ship out your app, you don't want the test framework to be bundled with it, right? You want the test to pass as a development dependency, right? And then once the tests are passing, you know that's good, then you can ship it off and not have to bundle the test framework with it, which is just extra bandwidth, right? So this is a directory, you just put it in there. All your tests with Jasmine. If you don't know how to write Jasmine tests, if you just go to the Jasmine website, they can explain it a lot better than I can. You can also use different test frameworks as well if you're more into TDD, test-driven development, and assertion and stuff like that. You can use QUnit as well. The magic happens in Gulp. So the Gulp file is basically where we define our Gulp tasks. And just by saying Gulp in the terminal, we define here that our default task is to just run test and watch. Test basically just runs the Karma server and runs the tests, and then watches the thing that is interesting here. So it actually watches certain directories. You can change this if you'd like, if you want to restructure and hack it up or whatever. But this is basically, whenever there's a file system change on any of these directories, it incrementally reruns tests. So you can just leave Gulp running in a terminal and then keep building your app, and it'll keep running the tests and make sure it passes every once in a while. Get back to your terminal and see what's passing and what's not passing. So it makes that aspect of testing fairly painless. You don't have to keep shooting commands at it and stuff. And yeah, I definitely recommend coding the GitHub repo and looking around yourself. It'll probably make a lot more sense. Are there any questions?
So are these unit tests or are these functional tests running in a headless browser?
They're functional tests running in a headless browser. That's what PhantomJS is for. Okay. So it uses Karma coupled with PhantomJS. And then, so PhantomJS is just it's basically like Google Chrome but headless, so you don't have to see any sort of UI while it's running the test.
Okay.
So then it instantiates that window object. Because you can run a Cordova app in a web browser, right? So this is essentially what we're doing. So then it spins up PhantomJS as the browser client, and then it runs Karma as the test runner, and then it keeps running every time using Gulp tasks. So it's sort of an accumulation of JavaScript technologies we have here. But
would you have unit tests as well, or just the Jasmine tests or specs?
I typically just do BDD, but you can do, yeah, I mean, I haven't tried implementing both of them, like multiple unit test frameworks, but you can if you want. I don't see any problem with that.
But there's not, I mean, if you can write unit tests with Jasmine, it's okay.
Yeah.
Can I see your tests? Did you show your tests? I don't think you showed your tests.
Yeah, I think I did. 1 second.
What are you testing? What are you inserting here?
Oh yeah, I should show that too. Huh? Be a good idea. So we can see these are just pretty simple tests. So we have I like showing just basic objects and then pound key for methods that you're defining in a different context for those methods. So a simple test is basically, I think here we're just saying true equals true. Yes, it does, good. And then add stuff is basically something where you can do like a variadic function to just either increment or concatenate strings or add numbers together, because you know JavaScript just allows to do that because it's type, it's not strong type. So
looks like a unit test.
Yeah, it's a unit test. So I'll look into, yeah, okay. So if we go back to the code here, and we go into this, it will probably make more sense. So here we're describing a window, and then this is where it gets that sort of hierarchy. You're just doing embedded calls here to describe, and then passing in a function. And then subject is basically what you're testing. So if this scope here, you're testing window, so subject equals window. This test here, you're testing app, so subject equals subject.app. Then you just keep going down and incrementally testing whatever you want based on context. It's kind of a tricky way to test if you're not used to it, but it's very modular, I think. So we're saying add stuff should work with numbers. Subject.add stuff 1, 2, 3, 4 should equal 10, and it does. And should not subtract all numbers. And then concatenation. Any other questions?
What's the test?
No, go ahead. With Jasmine, can you actually pull stuff out of the DOM?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, the whole point of having a unit testable app is to bind it to window and have all those things accessible. I haven't tried more like acceptance testing. That's something I kind of want to try on my own, because if you're familiar with how Rails tests and all, like you can use Capybara and Phantom.js as well to do headless browser testing and actually emulate a user, right?
Yeah.
So that's something as well. I think there's definitely a possibility here, because you are spinning up a web server, a headless web server, to even run the test, that unit test. So yeah, I can see that happening, but I just don't know what. I guess my knowledge in that area is a little bit limited. I'm not much of a node programmer. Yeah.
I guess this is sort of more just like a task running question around Cordova. I know when I use running Go, I often will like unify or just like have files
Yeah.
grouped together. Does that mess with Cordova? Does that change the functionality?
Actually, Ionic uses SCSS, uses SAS. So Ionic is basically just Cordova, but enhanced a little bit. So, and I think the way that works is it uses a task runner. So you can use task runners for more than just testing. This is just an application of a task runner. So you can have unit tests running, you can have CoffeeScript, you can have like Slim templates, stuff like that. You can basically sort of build your own sort of asset pipeline sort of thing, you know? And I think that's really cool, and that's probably what I'm going to try to test, or try to present at next meetup we have.
Yeah, I often use it to do multiple things. So what I'll do is I'll have it run a test, and then I'll have it minify all my files, and then whatever else I need to do. But you would probably minify your files after you ran your test, or you can do both. Run your. I don't know how well minified tests run. Probably fine.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, you wouldn't minify those. You minify your assets in the www,
yeah,
which should be okay.
Should be fine. Yeah, you do probably minify. I always tend to minify after, but I don't know whether it's proper practice or not.
There's no point in testing minified code.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? I mean,
Yeah.
it couldn't tell you which line it failed on.
Unless you mapped it, if you had a map, but then you'd have to run it a different way.
Draw that thing in, so you have.
Well, with Node, you can also do different
But it
code
wouldn't throw
tests
you
as
off,
well.
because it would be,
Yeah.
the code would be a code. It's
Yeah.
nothing really wrong with that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was his question right there.
My question was just more like using minify within like one of the source runners, whether that has any impact on whether
You
that
generally should minify your code, because if you think of it like you're running a web server on a phone, right? You're returning all of these JavaScript files and whatever, but like think of so I have an HTC One and it's got a decent processor, runs Cordova apps no problem. But what if you have like the Galaxy Nexus?
Right.
It's not gonna have even half the memory and stuff, so you gotta manage that. So like by minifying your code, you have to do less work and load, a little easier on the memory.
And the test would probably fail appropriately anyways. You know where exactly the test should fail.
Yeah, and well, you mean about minifying, right?
Yeah, for minifying.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the thing is, Node has different like staging environments and stuff like that too, or like different phases of an app. So you can run tasks for production, or you can run tasks for development, and you can have like development dependencies and stuff like that. Node is a very intricate package manager that way. So I'd imagine you'd only want to minify when you're building for production. So I don't know how that would all integrate with the Cordova app just yet, but I'm sure there's some kind of configuration up there, some guy blogging about it somewhere. So yeah. Any more?
What's in your test spec file?
What's what?
What's in the file that's above the one that's selected now? Called test_spec.js.
Oh yeah, this is just the simple test. It's
Oh,
just
that's simple.
yeah.
True to be true.
That's essentially just me testing out that I did this right. So I just left that in. And just in case people don't understand how Jasmine does this thing just yet, like it's essentially just saying, describe something, pass a function, if is an assertion, and then a function, and then expect us to do that.
I guess like the implementation here kind of it's like, you know, what you're showing here is, you know, I mean, the other tests are not much more complex than this. They're not testing much more complex functionality than this either.
No.
But, you know, like sometimes when you're working with this stuff, especially when you got now Karma thrown in there and Atom.js, it's like an achievement in itself to get to the point where this is all just executing.
Yeah, and this is essentially what I'm showing off, right?
It is, and
Yeah.
it is an achievement.
Yeah.
Just to get to that point, it takes a while, like with Karma specifically.
That's exactly why I made a GitHub repo, and I didn't make any of you do this. So, yeah, exactly. So you can just take the Go file and take the node dependency in the package JSON to the result.
Yeah, even Karma comments like
What was that, sorry?
you show us Karma comments for a second after
Thanks. One more time?
I said even also maybe let's see the Karma configuration file afterwards as well.
Oh, yeah. So package JSON is essentially just the node package management going on here. It's sort of like Composer for PHP. Then you have development dependencies, the name of it. You can also run NPM. You can also run tests through NPM and specify scripts, which are basically tests. Then you just pass that on to Go. So you can do some neat things here. And this is Karma configuration. Yeah. Yeah, so this is configuring the web server behind the scenes and stuff like that. You can use different web browsers here. You can specify Chrome, you can specify Firefox, Safari. Typically, you want to connect to JS as a headless and easy to test with. Single run is what you use to flag whether you want it to run continuously with a watch task or just run once. That's all in GitHub. You want to, if you want to put it.
And there's a Gulf file. What is the Gulf file?
Gulf file?
I mean, what does it happen?
It has the task definition.